Okay, so today is just a day for you to check over your journal pages. Make sure you have them all completed and check your answers and make sure you were thinking along the right lines. So for this page, the producer, consumer, decomposer page, our producers, you should have something like an organism that makes its own food. Okay. If you put something else a little different, as long as you talk about the fact that it makes its own food, you might have said using energy from the sun. As long as you're along those lines, you're fine. You don't have to have my exact wording on any of these definitions, as long as you have the basic idea right. Okay. My producers are the rows, and this right here shows algae on top of a body of water. So as long as you had those two images, you're good to go. For a consumer, remember that a consumer is anything that needs another organism for energy. So a consumer obtains energy by eating other organisms. Now, the reason there's no picture there is because there are 3 different types of consumers on this journal page. An herbivore is a consumer that eats only plants for energy. A carnivore is a consumer that eats only meat or other animals for energy. I know some kiddos like to say only meat, but remember that does include insects. And a lot of times people don't think of insects as meat. Okay, and then an omnivore is a consumer that eats both plants and animals for energy. So as long as you have definitions along those lines, you're good. An example of herbivore would be the buffalo here, the water buffalo. Kind of looks like an ox. Okay, your carnivore is your lion. And believe it or not, the bear that we have here is an omnivore because he eats both berries and fish and other small animals. So since he eats berries and other animals, he is an omnivore. Finally, we have a decomposer, which breaks down dead organisms and waste for energy. So we have 3 different pictures for decomposer. We have the fungi or the mushroom. The blue here, this is actually bacteria, and these are worms. So go ahead and make any corrections that you need to make. Your journal is a resource that you can refer to while you're working. So I want you to make sure that you have all of the correct answers in your journal page. In this journal page, you are supposed to start with describing each one as biotic or abiotic. So for example, you and an apple, well, I am biotic, and so is the apple. They are both biotic. When we're talking about depending on one another, well, the apple does not depend on me, but I depend on the apple for energy because I eat the apple and that's how I get energy. Okay, so for plants and bacteria, plants and bacteria are both biotic. Okay, and then this could go 2 different ways. You could say that plants and bacteria are interdependent because they both can depend on each other. So bacteria, since it's a decomposer, can break down plants' for energy when the plants die. Or you could also say that plants depend on bacteria to put nutrients in the soil, because when bacteria break down dead things or waste, they're putting nutrients back in the soil that the plants need to grow. So they both depend upon each other. For the worker bee and the flowers, it's the same idea. So first, the bee and the flowers, they are both biotic. Okay, and then the bee depends on the flowers to gather nectar to make honey. But if you know about pollination, the flowers depend on the bee for pollination in order to reproduce. And if you run out of room, you can always adjust these like this. Okay, finally, we have mole and dirt. So the mole is biotic because it is a living thing, and the dirt is abiotic because it is non-living. So since the dirt is non-living, it can't really depend on anything, but the mole depends on the dirt for shelter because it burrows into the dirt as its home. Okay, the last one you have here, you were supposed to watch this video and it tells you all about photosynthesis. So your three big ingredients for photosynthesis would be, so plants, because it says use complete sentences. So plants take in carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay, and this is important to know because this basically explains to you why plants are considered producers, because they are able to make their own food using the sun's energy. Okay, so this one is asking, what is the product that plants make for food? Well, plants make glucose during photosynthesis. Okay, and here I said plants are a biotic factor in our ecosystem. Why are humans dependent upon plants and the process of photosynthesis? Well, plants produce oxygen as a waste product during photosynthesis, which is what people need to breathe. So without plants, we wouldn't be able to breathe, and that's why we depend on the process of photosynthesis. So make sure that you've checked all of your answers. If your answers here were slightly different, as long as you have something that sounds like my answers that are very similar, you don't have to have my exact wording. You just have to have the right idea. Now, if you have something that was completely off, please do go ahead and adjust your answers. And if anything was confusing, you didn't understand it, please send me a message, email me, ask for a Google Meets. I do not mind setting that up. If you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Now, make sure your journal is up to date and make sure you go back and turn in your bell ringer.